Hello and welcome. I'm Chris, and this is the Hair Tutorials. And today we're going to be having a chat with Mark Brown from the Fantastic Hairdresser. Now, as you all know, recently I launched a video talking about employed and self-employment. So, obviously, the main sort of part of this video today is to sort of focus and concentrate on that aspect. However, if you have got any other sort of business or employed or self-employed questions, feel free to drop them in the box. As you know, if you've joined in any of my other lives, there's normally a technical problem, so bear with me if there is a slight technical problem. And hopefully, if anybody is online, if you can give me a thumbs up, that would be great so that I can see if the chat is working and can you hear me and see me. Okay, so I'm going to bring Mark on now, if you just bear with me.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
I'm good, mate. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us.
No
So,
problems
Mark,
at all.
I've briefly mentioned, that you're part of Fantastic Coaching. So, do you just want to tell everybody why they're sort of logging on and everything? What it exactly is it entails and what exactly you do?
So what I do is I was a salon owner. I've just, as you know, Chris, starting to wind up my businesses and have been hairdressing for a similar amount of time as yourself, 35 years, and also during that time teaching and learning for quite a while. And a sort of a part of the natural path of that was to go into business coaching. And effectively, I sort of had the catchphrase that the high street's dying. So I do what I can to help salon owners survive whilst I attempt to survive myself. So a part of that coaching is helping you as an individual, whether you be a salon owner or a stylist or like yourself, Chris, who's now doing lots of YouTube and online, but helping you achieve your potential. And a bit like this 18-year-old Brit who's just won, is it the US Open?
Yeah.
Emma, she's got three coaches, and really effectively, everyone needs a coach in some way, in some aspect, to help them reach the potential in their lifestyle or in their business world. So that's what I do. Yeah,
Cool. Yeah, I mean, that's something that I've been interested in. I think I've
yeah,
always read sort of books, whether that be on business or self help. Always good to sort of improve yourself and try and motivate yourself as well to do better.
yeah. I mean, you and I are very similar in this regard. It's what I call lifelong learners. We're always looking at doing something new. For instance, we're using new technology today. And that's
Fingers
probably come
crossed.
out of, yeah, hopefully it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But, we make mistakes in life and in business and in our working life. And the only way we can really learn from that is when we, debrief them and go and find the information. And a coach helps to guide you where to go and what to do and what to focus on.
Now I know that you've been watching some of my videos and you've given me feedback on some other videos that I put out in the past. And obviously last week I put out the new one on sort of self-employed and employment. And I know as well that
Yeah.
this has been a bit of a topic. And there were so many points within the video that I couldn't sort of raise because it would have made the video hours long. But I know that
Yeah.
you had some sort of key points that you sort of like to give your opinion on and address.
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, what we're really talking about here is the culture of our industry. And I thinking back to the 20 years that I've lived in the UK, and obviously you can tell by the accent, I'm from, a little bit further south for a while. And I've actually never worked in a salon where I've been on the payroll that I didn't own. In other words, I was the owner of the salon and put myself on as a director's payroll.
Right.
And I have worked in education and obviously run a salon for, as you know, we've known each other now 10, 11 years.
Yeah.
And the reality is that the culture of our industry is all you can go and get qualified. You can either go into an employed position or, like the majority of people are doing, is you can go and work in self-employed. The reason it's becoming a hot topic, and sadly, there's a lot of people who are taking employers to tribunals, and the tribunals are giving judgments on the relationship between a self-employed stylist and under the disguised employment issues that are around.
Yeah.
this kind of all started with like Plimico plumbers, Deliveroo, um, Uber, and it's working its way into our industry. And the issue we have is that a lot of people will talk about IR35 legislation, and actually, that's not the legislation that affects us. The legislation that affects us is the Good Working Plan. I think it's either the Good Working Plan or the Good Working Guide. I always get that a bit mixed up, but it still is. That's the legislation we've got to work from,
Right.
and that's what's being judged against. And that legislation basically, in a nutshell, and I'm not a lawyer, I am just a hairdresser like yourself, as you know.
Yeah.
I
It's not
just
legal advice. It's always, yeah,
No,
just
no,
advice.
it's not legal advice. It's just it's opinion basically. But what what that legislation basically says is that we have to determine whether the people who are working for us are employed, self-employed, or the new classification that you like, workers. Um, and what's happening is people are taking their employers to court through tribunal, or HMRC are coming into salons and basically saying, we want to see your payroll. And of course, if you run self employed, they are now relying on these judgments that have come through. And there's been, I think, 10 or 12 in the last 18 months that have been specific to the hairdressing industry.
Right.
One was a lass called Megan in Manchester, or Megan rather.
Yeah, that one, I
There's
think everybody saw. That was quite publicized, wasn't it? That one.
Yeah, there's another beauty therapist in the north of England who was working for someone for 6 months, claimed what they call their statutory right, and she won in tribunal. And what this is that it's not so much an attack; it's just the government basically are now focusing on us. They focused on other sectors before, and this legislation, and by us I mean personal care, because during the pandemic we became a part of the personal care for government, and personal care includes hairdressers, beauty therapists, and I believe tattooists as well.
Right.
Um, and so now we have this scrutiny on us, and this scrutiny is it's causing people to question whether they're self-employed or not self-employed, and going from there.
Now, obviously, I mean, I've taken this sort of more from a hairdresser's point. I've run two
Yeah,
salons um, in the past. It was very different. I mean, when I worked in London, every single hairdresser was employed, and it wasn't until I moved out of London, actually moved down to the southwest, um, that I would encounter all of these hairdressers self-employed, and it did baffle me.
yeah, yeah. There could be a very, very good financial reason why in London you were employed, and that is, and I think you mentioned this when you were an apprentice. How much was the rent?
Oh, it was ridiculous. It was like £1 million a year. It was absurd.
So to pay £1 million in rent and have a split in the amount that comes in, that's pretty risky. You're risking a lot of money. So the model, and I mean the model at the moment is the employed staff are turning over. In other words, their column is running at around about 3.5 times what they're getting paid.
Yeah,
And this is going to be the issue moving forward as this culture changes. And that issue will be that, I know 20 hairdressers in Bristol who are all self employed, who are all taking £500-600 a week. Now, for them to take £500-600 a week from, when we go to this cultural change, they're going to have to start doing 1,500 to 2,000
yeah,
in turnover, excluding that. And this is the other thing that will raise its head. It's effectively easy to run a self-employed salon and stay under the VAT threshold.
yeah,
And some salons that are being pinned or questioned by HMRC can't demonstrate that their staff are genuinely self-employed and are getting backdated VAT bills for the full 100% of the turnover. So it becomes a risky business to be in now. Certainly, I mean, we discussed this a couple of weeks ago when you were up in my shop. Um, I started self-employed and I grew to 4 salons. It was for me. It was like this is what people want,
yeah.
and you know that it is to an extent what people really want is to be paid. They want good wages.
Right. No one's jumping in the comments yet, but I have got a couple of DMs that came through. I won't give out names just in just in case.
Just in
So
case.
just in case. Okay. So first question is lady has been interviewed for a job and she's been offered a position within the salon as a self-employed stylist, and this is recent. This is within the last week or so. Um, However, again, she sort of feels that it's more of an employed position, not self-employed, and she doesn't know sort of how she feels about this and how to approach it with the salon.
So, I mean, this is where the difficulty is going to be. My personal feeling is that if it doesn't feel right, then probably keep looking for another position. But one of the things that these judgments are showing is, and the main thing is control. I read a judgment the other day, and it basically said that this person, and this didn't even get to trial. This was a case management judgment to decide whether this person was self-employed or employed, and it was ruled or judged by court that because this person did a trade test and had to work to a certain standard within the salon,
Yeah.
that was enough to show that the salon was in control.
Right.
So
Wow.
my initial feeling is that if you're not feeling that it is a truly self-employed position, maybe you need to keep looking.
Yeah.
The other option is if you really want to work there, approach and just say, look, this is the legislation now. How are you getting around this?
Yeah.
Because there are models to get around it. And, that model seems to be the rent a chair. However, there's some serious caveats around it. And that is, for instance, let's say you came and worked in my shop
Yeah.
and it was a rent a chair. You would have to pay me rent no matter what. So you would have to be at risk. If you didn't go to work next week, you're still paying your rent.
Right.
And if I turned around and went, look, Chris, you've had a really hard time. Your daughter's not very well. Your car blew a tire. I get it. It's no worries. Don't worry about the rent this week. It's fine. Yeah, we're mates. And because there's so many salons around at the moment, because, we've got 70,000 apparently. We thought we had 40,000, but actually, it's really hard to keep staff. So people are doing this quite naturally. They're trying to
Yeah.
keep staff that they've got. So if you came in and did that, you would have to pay rent. And also, I would have to have nothing to do with your business. So
Right.
you would effectively be running your own business from your marketing. And I don't just mean you've got your own social media page.
Yeah.
I mean from your marketing, your reception, your everything that you would normally kind of share in a salon naturally.
Yeah.
The other issue would be that if you did take a holiday, and the big thing that's coming up is substitution. So let's assume that you and we both rent a chair in Big Al's salon up the road.
Yeah.
And you say, Chris, I'm going on holidays. I'm off on holidays. Can you do Betsy Boo that comes in on a Wednesday at 3 o'clock?
Which we all do.
And you go,
Yeah.
perfectly natural, normal thing to do. That for Big Al is now seen as him being in control because I should actually be substituting who I put in.
Right.
And that's my interpretation. Again, that's not legal advice. That's my interpretation of what's going on. And that's going to create a very big cultural shift in what we're doing and how we're doing things.
So
So,
you raised a sort of an interesting point, and again, I won't sort of name the people, but I was in a thread a couple of weeks ago now, and there was a discussion going on about trade tests. Funny
yeah.
enough, and it was somebody had given a trade test to somebody, and then this person hadn't got the position. Salon didn't feel it was right. Now I don't know here whether it was going for a self-employed or employed position, but the person then asked for payment during the
Uh,
trade test.
yeah.
Now I wanted to
Uh,
jump in on this conversation, but I again have never heard of a situation like that because again I'm old school. To me it was like if you want to work somewhere, you found a model, you took them in, you present your work. If the salon like you and your work, you'd be offered a position. It
mm,
never even crossed my mind to even get the train money or whatever from the salon. It was part of the interview. But again, from another perspective, could there be a future issue here with things like that?
I mean, potentially there could be,
Would
and
that
it
show
would it
control
would.
by doing that to seeing somebody
Oh,
sort of
oh, certainly. If that was a self-employed position,
right,
then that is demonstrating control. It's the start of the process of control,
right,
because what you're saying to someone is you're not acting as a landlord. So if I were to have someone come into my salon next week, take over a column, or to start their business, that's the issue. Now we know that as an industry, we all have our own standards of how we work.
yeah,
There are people out there who say, yeah, we only do dry cuts. Now, you know that I think dry cuts are like vomit on the floor, and I do not want to
they're
go
not bad.
near a dry
Say
cut.
what you mean.
And you know what I mean, though. You know, they're
Yes,
not quite that bad, but it's a standard and a level of working that I don't want in my salons, and I
yeah,
never have. And, and I think I've even told you off for attempting to do one at one point, but that's another issue. But that's my standards. That's the point I'm making is I wanted those standards in my shop. And we're all very emotionally attached to our shops, as we should be.
yeah,
But if I say to you coming in as a self-employed or a rent-a-chair, you've got to meet this standard.
right.
I'm not. I'm not dictating. I am now dictating how you work in your business.
Okay, so I'm playing a bit of devil's advocate here as well, sort of, because no one's commenting. So I'm sort of wondering whether people sort of don't want to jump in or whatever. So I'm going to play a bit of
Sure. Yeah.
devil's advocate here. But listen, if you were renting a property, and you were the landlord of that building, you'd seek references, background checks, bank statements, and stuff to prove that you were a worthy person to sort of rent that building. So,
Yeah.
how does that then differ from, saying, well, you're going to be
Yeah.
working in my premises,
I see
therefore
your
I
point.
need to see your standard of work?
Yeah. So I see your point. So when I rented my buildings, and I think I've rented 5 buildings over the years, I was asked for financial references.
Yeah,
I was asked to prove that I had a good understanding of business, and clearly I do. I was asked to prove that I had a solid financial background.
yeah,
So, they credit rated me or they credit rated my company. And I was asked to show or to demonstrate that I had history in doing this. But I wasn't asked by my landlord, do you do this to this standard?
okay, all right,
So
yes,
that
okay,
that's the distinction. That's the difference or the distinction between you're coming in and I'm trade testing you on the standards in the shop, and a landlord saying, "Yeah, you can rent my space because you've got good financial history."
okay. All right,
Obviously
yeah,
you can do it.
that's yeah, that
Yeah,
makes okay. That clear because again, in my sort of hairdressing, I like I said, I've owned. Someone's just said hi, so whoever it is, hello. If you want to ask a question, jump in. Um, okay, so what about the issue as well then of is that considered subletting? So if you
it is
rent,
absolutely.
would you
Yeah,
need a sublet clause in your rental agreement from your landlord?
absolutely, and it's a very, very good point that you raise because, from my understanding, talking to other people who are involved or work in these kind of areas, is that some landlords are now actually trying to boot out tenants
Right.
after pandemic, and they're using the reliance on the sublet clause because they don't generally. You it's very, very difficult to get a building, especially like you've seen my building. It's huge
Yeah.
and it's in the middle of Broadmead, in the middle of Bristol. And the last thing they want to do is have a sublet arrangement because if I go bust, they then got to deal with the sublet.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you do absolutely need to have a sublet clause, and your landlord needs to understand how you're operating your business.
Right.
Or, as some people do, you need to be the owner. You
Yeah.
need to have it on, from there. So that is something that you really should be looking at as a business owner. So
Okay. All right. We have another one. Let's have a look. Some question. Where was the other one? Okay. So the second question was somebody who currently is employed, no, self-employed in a salon, and the salon is moving now over to employed model. which
Yeah,
again, I'm sure this has caught some salons off guard, and
yeah.
they're just coming to terms with it. And this person's, you know, wondering, can they do that? Can they make them go from a self-employed model to an employed model?
Well, I mean, I would think that no one could make you do something you don't want to do. However, what they can do is, withdraw your contract or bring your contract to an end. And I mean, if you're concerned, I suppose the two ways of looking at it is if you're happy to be employed, sit down and negotiate. It will be, the facts remain though that, if I employ you, you're only working for 48 weeks in a year. I have to pay your national insurance, your pension,
Yeah,
and national insurance has just gone up by 10%. And I have to make a profit still. So that means that the multiplier that you've got to earn goes from being either 60-40 split or 50-50 split to you've got to hit 3.5 times your wage.
yeah,
The other issue you have too is that your employer then has got to guarantee, they've got to have the cash flow to guarantee your wage if you're not busy.
yeah,
And they can absolutely dictate in accordance with the laws, obviously, but they can dictate what you do, when you do it, when you go on holidays, and how you do things. And I suppose if you've been self-employed for a while, and again, this is a cultural thing. I don't know any, very few hairdressers who are actually employed that I haven't employed. But as a cultural thing, if you're used to dictating that yourself,
yeah,
you don't want to go into a position where you do. So I would suggest if that person's not sure about it, then perhaps it's time to move on and take the risk yourself.
yeah.
Go into your own salon or sit down with your boss or the person who's self-employing you. See, that's the issue. Which one do we use? Do we use the boss or the salon owner?
Yeah,
So um, I would sit down and talk about it. You know,
yeah. Well, I think again, this is something that, within the hairdressing industry. I mean, I know there's a lot of issues in the hairdressing industry. We've all been,
mm,
or certainly, I think you and me have been one of those people that have had to scrub skirting boards and had bosses
yeah,
and
yeah,
that throw things at
yeah,
them, and
with our own special toothbrush.
that's it. We've come through those times, and we've realised they're not
Yeah,
acceptable. And thank God
yeah.
it's moved on in that sense. And this is sort of it's it's a new phase for hairdressing. We're moving into something that, a lot of
It,
the old guard
yeah,
hairdressers, including myself in that, um,
yeah.
are struggling to get their head around. Um,
The most random comment I've ever seen. That's
yeah,
really
well,
okay.
we'll not reply to that one.
No,
Um,
I think, yeah.
you might have
I
to
wonder if it's a
elaborate for
friend of
that one.
mine.
Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, these are different times. So where do you sort of hairdressing's got to shift? It's got to change. What do you think will is a new model for the hairdressing industry? What are the sort of the key things that we've got to
Oh,
do?
I mean, that's,
We're not trying to get a free live session out of you here. We're
oh
trying to
no,
keep
that's,
keep it
that's
very
fine.
short
Yeah.
and
But
sweet.
yeah, I think it's very difficult to see what the new model is, but I certainly think that a future model could potentially be much bigger salons. My salon, as you know, there's room for like 20 chairs, but finding 20 people to work in it is really, hard when you're an employer. If they're self-employed, that might be easier, but of course now that that's going out, so I think there's going to be bigger salons, and I think the industry is going to go through this little blip, and it's not just our industry. I, I have a friend who's a personal trainer who's self-employed,
Yeah,
who's now being told he has to be employed. Um, and there's lots of industry that go through that. I think there definitely needs to be an industry-wide price rise from barbershops all the way
okay,
through to the top end salons, because if you're going from turning over a grand a week and taking 500 in your pocket or 600, and you've then got to go and work for someone employed, and they're going like, well, we can pay you minimum wage, um, and you'd be like, well, hang on. And that breeds that culture of let's just run a mobile business on our own and things like that, which is perfectly legitimate,
yeah,
but that mobile culture doesn't last. It comes in waves and comes out of waves. So I think there needs to be, and there will be, a price rise purely because of this kind of issue, because charging 50 quid for a cut and blow dry now, I think will be more like 70 or 80 coming up soon, and those will be standard prices. So there'll be, a year or two, maybe 6 months to a year of things wobbling around and the industry finding its feet. But I think we are so uniquely positioned as hairdressers. We're now becoming the destination of, you know, the high street, because all of the big brands are going, everyone's moving online. And the one thing you really do, you can't really do at home, not to a great sort of deal with huge profitability,
Yeah.
is run mobile hairdressing. People have to come into the salons at some point. So,
Well,
yeah,
again, I mean, at the moment, eventually the mobile hairdressers as well are going to start to encounter the government's
yeah,
wrath as well.
yeah,
Once they've sort of got to grips with the 70,000 salons that apparently
yeah,
are there or were there, um, then they're going to go, hang on, where have all the other hairdressers gone? So I think, yeah,
mm,
there's, I've done a bit of mobile over the years. Personally, it's it's nice being in a salon. It's nice feeding off of other people. It's nice having everything laid out and not having to pack it away or go into somebody else's house and stuff like that. So,
yeah, yeah,
from that point of view, prefer being in a salon and sort of having that environment. But I understand the mobile industry as well is big, but I don't know whether they're going to escape it um,
yeah.
for very long
I
either.
think Yeah, I think the other pressures that are coming up too is like I think there's going to be a rise in the cost of our colour, and I think that's going to be as a result of just the transport issues we've got in the country at the moment. I won't mention the B word, and I think also, we're already being told, or it's already been nudged through the government at the moment about whether the VAT threshold is at the right spot, and certainly if they bring the VAT threshold down, it's going to make it a little bit more difficult to run that easy mobile column that you've got around the corner or that. So I think there's going to be bigger salons, and I think those salons and the culture of those salons are going to change slightly. And for me, in the years I've been employed, the stability of that employed is really good.
Yeah,
And I think the levels that are within salons at the moment, there's very few salons that have the sort of the apprentice, the stylist, the senior stylist, and then go on to do training and things like that. I think there's going to be more opportunity to have those levels within salons so people can progress. And like we were saying, before we came on, like, you know, to do training and to be in salon doing training. And, I think there will be legitimate, purposeful roles.
yeah.
They already are in some salons, but not in the
Well,
majority,
you're already
from my
finding it. I mean,
observation.
again, I'm on a lot of sort of different hairdressing sites as you are, and
Yeah,
I've seen so many posts over the last couple of weeks of people excited for courses taking places in colleges, and then
yeah.
only to be notified that those courses aren't going to run because the numbers simply aren't there, or
Oh, wow.
the more mature students um, can't get the funding that they need
Yeah,
to go
yeah.
into it. So yeah, again, I can see that once you get larger salons, and you get this minimum wage is paid and it's structured, and you know you charge the right amount, it could
Mm,
actually bring a lot of younger people in because
yeah,
they'll have that
yeah,
structure, they'll have that
yeah.
stability there.
I totally agree, and I mean, I think it. I mean, we've talked about this extensively because we both come from an educational background. It's like if there's anyone out there who wants to get into hairdressing, I think by far the best way to do that is through an apprenticeship scheme. And I really don't think it matters how old you are. A lot of my stylists used to be my apprentices, and some of them started at 25 and some of them started at 35. And there are ways of doing it where you're not just on that £4 a week or
Yeah.
£4 an hour or whatever it is. Not £4 a week. That would be a
Four
real
pounds an
problem.
hour for
But
sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, £4 an hour is bad enough. I mean, I'm not sure what it is exactly at the moment, but if you're in that situation out there and you're disheartened because the college has gone, we can't get the funding. There is funding for apprentices, and people are screaming out for them.
Yeah.
Get into the salon. It's the best way to learn how to be a hairdresser or barber, and it's the best way to learn how to get those soft skills that is the consultation and all those things that you do on your videos so eloquently.
Ah, thank you very
Okay?
much. Right. Well, I think that's a good sort of area, just because we've not got any questions coming in. I don't want to bombard, but I know that you've got some things coming up in the future, and I'm sure you've raised a couple of sort of points here, and I think people will probably log on to the video and I'll sift through the
Yeah,
comments at a
yeah,
later
sure.
date. But I would love to have
Yeah,
you back on at another point, because I know you've got some stuff coming up. I know you're very,
yeah,
very active as well on Clubhouse. Um,
yeah.
Trying to draw
It's,
me into the
you know, and
circle.
I think you should. Like, I'm finding on Clubhouse, because I'm in the process of closing my salons, and pardon me, my cat may actually jump in front of the screen in a
That's
second.
all
So
right. It'll probably
apologies if
boost
he
the
does.
ratings.
Yeah, probably. Might get some viewers.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, he's going to. Um, I think because as you know, I'm in the process of closing my salons, and as a part of that, I'm going full steam into my coaching and some of the other things that I have. Now it's turning into a Bond movie.
And we're still live, so we can't make
Yeah,
any comments.
no, we can't make any comments. But you know what's I'm finding on Clubhouse is that there's so many people out there who just want to share information.
Yeah.
And it's everything from social media. And I know, Chris, you're very good at social media. I'm not. I mean, I really would rather just go and play with my van. But, you've got to learn these things. But so, yes, I'm very active on there, very active through the Fantastic Hairdresser and my fantastic coach. Join Clubhouse, jump in. If you're in the Clubhouse room, please, it's great for people like me because I've got a voice for radio and I've got a head for radio.
Thank you, Becky.
And
Nice comment. Thank you.
yeah, well, Becky's actually one of my fellow coaches.
Ah,
So thanks for
hi,
joining, Becky.
Becky.
You've bumped the numbers up, lovely. But yes, one of my things at the moment is to get active out there and actually to join the conversation. And there is a lot of people having some really interesting conversations about our industry, and it's everything from consultations to business side of it, like through the 5 pillars of your business. So yeah, very good.
Good advice. So, anybody rewatching this or watching this who's staying quiet and listening in the sidelines, yeah, get involved. You don't have to participate. You just have to listen. There's lots of people with lots of information. And thanks for joining us, Mark. I would
My pleasure.
love to have you back at another date. I'm going to
Yep,
leave this up
absolutely.
on YouTube. I'm going to leave it up on Facebook, and I'll keep an eye on the comments as well to see people rewatching it, or maybe jumping in to the DMs at a later date, and might be picking your brains to direct them to the right website and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
certainly. Yeah,
So,
more than happy to make it a regular thing.
so thank you everyone, and I shall see you all very soon.
Thank you, Chris.